Welcome to another edition of the SprintCarLimited.com Deep Dive presented by EnTrust IT Solutions. Joining us on the show today is POWRi promoter Kenny Brown. Before we get to Kenny, don't forget to check out EnTrust IT Solutions. EnTrust is a full-service technology company serving small and mid-sized businesses in New York, Pennsylvania, and surrounding areas. The staff at EnTrust IT Solutions takes a personalized approach to technology. See why customers are choosing EnTrust IT Solutions as their technology partner by scheduling a free consultation at www.entrust-msp.com or by calling 717-292-8868. Now here's Kenny. Kenny, welcome to the Deep Dive. We appreciate you taking time out of your day so close to the holidays to join the program.
Well, I appreciate you having me, Jeremy. I'm looking forward to it.
So, I think POWRi, I think midgets. Well, we can't do that anymore. But to be honest, I'm not in the midget. I wasn't in the midget kind of. I don't have midget.com. I have sprintcarlimited.com. So when I heard your name the first time, I started to look up, kind of who you were and kind of your background. And I wanted to give people that kind of look back. When did you first get, I guess, hooked in racing? I know you started POWRi in 2005 and you were a driver, but way back before that, when did you first get exposed to racing?
Well, it was, back when, before 2000, my brother-in-law, which was a big time midget driver and competed in the USAC and Mara regions. He's won Belleville, Kansas twice. In high school, I would go to his races and I really enjoyed it. Unfortunately, though, when he was racing, I was in college and, we had 6 kids in the family. So it wasn't something that my parents could fund. It was kind of, one of those things that they did a really great job getting us all to school and giving us all an opportunity to go to college. But unfortunately, they just couldn't afford racing. So when I got out of college is when I told my brother-in-law, I said, I'd like to get a race car and try this. And that's when I bought my first midget. And of course, he had already had several years of racing under him. But as soon as I, bought the first midget, I got hooked and, started racing. Ever since then, I've been involved in racing at one point or the other.
Who was your brother-in-law?
When we were Steve Knepper.
Okay.
When we started racing, I was with a group called Mara, which is the Midwest Auto Racing Association. It was a club. And unfortunately, we were, when I got involved, I had spent all that money and bought a car and a trailer and all that, but the club was kind of floundering. So I had taken a step back. I got on the board and I told them guys that we probably need to self-promote our own races and go down that path. So while I was racing, I ventured off myself and started promoting a few midget races. Well, 1 snowballed into 2, 2 snowballed into 3. The next thing you know, our club is suffering because, it's a club-driven series, and we all wanted to be part of it, but we all wanted to race, and there was a lot of work to be done to be successful. So I stepped out of the car and started our series, which at that time in 2005, when I started it, was called Gateway Racing Incorporated, GRI. And then we had with Gateway International Racing right next door to us, we needed to change our name so that we were better known. And I had played football through college and had a lot of sports background. And of course, we needed to change the name, and we came up with the name POWRi, and that really stands for Performance Open Wheel Racing Incorporated. But okay. POWRi in the name of football is a formation called POWRi. They still run it today in football. And that's how my football background and racing background came together. And that's how the name POWRi was formed.
So
So
yeah,
go ahead.
no, you formed POWRi.
Yes.
Now, and it was based kind of in the lower Midwest. Am I correct on that?
Right. I'm from St. Louis, so right there in the back of our, Midwest um, of the U.S., right there in the middle.
How difficult
So,
how difficult is it to start a series like that, especially one that has grown to what it is today?
well, I think, if you're talking about today starting a series versus when I started this in 2005, this is our 20th year. This year we'll be celebrating that. The biggest thing is, when I started it, um, with the background I had and the sports, we are able to pull it off. And it was more about when I went to races and I watched how tracks ran. My number one goal was to first be able to run a program and get the trust of the drivers that we are proficient. And back in 2005, there was no My Race Pass. There was, not everybody used transponders. So we had to do it the old fashioned way. We had manual scores. We did manual lineups. We did it in Excel, obviously, but at the end of the day, we're so far ahead today versus we were in 2005. And what I mean by that is, our forte was doing midgets and micros, and it was not uncommon for us to have 50 to 60 micros and 40 midgets. And we would almost walk into a racetrack with two divisions and have 100 cars. That's how strong our following became. And really, it all goes back to the drivers, the teams, and the families that really believed in us. We just had a product that we were trying to streamline and make better as we continued to grow. And that means from the second hot lap start at 6 o'clock, we're right into the heats into the B's intermission, and out the door we go. And our goal was to get our show done in 2.5 to 3 hours. And it just snowballed from, doing a couple of races. I showed Mara we could do this ourselves. And then the next thing you know, honestly, we lost our president with Mara. She had passed away, was a great lady. And the club kind of floundered and fell apart. And luckily, I just continued to keep going down the path I was going. And we more or less took over the area. And it wasn't designed like that. It just happened because everyone on the club, me including, I was on the board. We'd go to a club meeting and we really didn't want to do any work. We wanted to go work on our race cars and get ready for the next race. So, it wasn't just me. It's not uncommon we go to a club meeting and we're cooking fish and drinking beer and working on the race cars instead of figuring out what tracks we're going to. So, there really needed to be the serious side of it, which was the promoting. And I enjoyed that immensely. So I stepped out of the car and started POWRi and took off from there and didn't stop. We got really strong with midgets and micros. And then we started adding things as we grew and got our feet on the ground and built our foundation. And as we started building layers to the company, we started getting involved in every aspect of racing. It's funny, like you said, that you look me up and you'll think I'm just midgets. Well, we run everything from quarter midgets to 410 sprint, and probably the only thing we don't do is Silver Crown, but we do the entire state of Missouri. Parts of Oklahoma, Kansas City are all sanctioned under POWRi. I think there's only 2 to 3 tracks in the state of Missouri that are not sanctioned by POWRi. That means they're A mods, they're B mods, they're C mods, they're Midwest mods, the pure stocks, the super stocks, the late models, the Hornets. They're all sanctioned by POWRi. So, for us to just think it's midgets, we have We on a complete separate website from POWRi. We have POWRi Stock Mod, similar to the dirt cars at World Racing Group. We have our own stock car program, and it goes all the way to Colorado, Kansas City. We have late models there. Oklahoma, we're big in Oklahoma. You know, we have some tracks and sanctioning bodies in Texas. I just got off the phone with our 360 group in New Mexico, which is getting ready to release their schedule. They just did the big 10,000 to win over Thanksgiving, where Rico and a lot of guys from California drove down to run that race. So we pretty much go, you know, from the East Coast to the West Coast. We don't have a lot on in the West. We had a lot of quarter midget clubs, but it's tough to compete with. USAC's got one hell of a program with the quarter midgets. So we're probably falling off since NASCAR took that program, but everything in between. I mean, we got our big KKM micro races, which we do with Keith Coons. We partnered with him. And what those are is we do about 7 to 10,000 to win micro shows. And then the last one we do, we call the give back. And if you win that event, you have the choice between $15,000 or take a ride at the Chili Bowl.
Right. Yes.
So
I remember that. Yep.
So that's a POWRi sanctioned, you know, Keith has the name, and with us two working together, I came up with the idea of, you know, the 2-day format and how we run it, because we single car qualify them all. Just a lot of different things to make them feel, you know, when you get to the top of your driving cars, meaning you start out as a youngster and you're in a micro or quarter midget and you work your way up. We wanted to give those guys a feel in the micro what it would be like to single car qualify and watch them get amped up and ready to go. So, you know, there's pretty much, outside of a Silver Crown car, I would say we do, you know, we sanction lightning sprints, dwarf cars, pretty much everything. You know, there's a lot of racing in the Midwest that a guy doesn't really need to go. People tend to find you if you're doing your stuff, you know, if you're doing everything right.
So that being said, before we get to the sprint car portion of things, over the years, this thing's grown and you've kept adding divisions. And obviously I'm sure you never imagined it would grow to this. How big is this company now? How many employees do you have total? And again, did you ever think it would turn into something where you're in that many places with that many divisions?
You know, when I started this, my intent was I'm very blessed and very fortunate. You know, like I said, my mother and father gave us all an opportunity to go to college and get a degree, and there were 6 kids, and I chose to go to, you know, I was lucky and I had a football scholarship, but I majored in operations management and I had a business degree. And one of the things I wanted to do after I landed a really good job and I retired just recently, I wanted to retire at a young age so that I had the opportunity in life to do 2 things. One is I worked for a major corporation that I learned how to do marketing and global sales. You know, before we were a global company, we were just a North American company. Well, there's so much out of the U.S. that's, you know, with China and Thailand and Japan and Russia and Canada, the amount of business and how I learned how to do business. But not only that, our company was a sales company and we made products that we sold. Well, I also got to learn how to market a product and how to get it out there to people. And it all comes back to, there's no key, what's your formula? It's really about being organized, and making sure you run a tight ship. And, you know, when you ask about that, you can't judge the size of a company by the number of employees, because if you do, some people have too many employees And
Right.
I feel that in order for POWRi to be successful, I have a vision and I have a dream, but it's the people that I surrounded myself with and all the people that I don't even want to say work for POWRi that are involved with our series that do work for me. They're the ones that are making it happen, not me. It's easy for me to come in and say, hey, I want to do this. But I've got enough energy within our corporation that they're excited to take on. They're young. I think all our people are starving for new material. Plus, we have the opportunity to sit back and learn from a lot of other sanctioning bodies, right? Like if you're going to go out and do something, no reason to reinvent the wheel. Just look at what this sanctioning body is doing right or wrong and take the right and go on. And, the competition is tough right now, but it's like anything else. When you look at competition, it's narrowing. It's narrowing, meaning there's not a lot, there's not a lot of us out there. Like for instance, 20 years ago, there was 100 clubs out there running micro races. There was the National Micro Midget Association, which you would thought would never go away, just like QMA. You would never think it would go away because of the size and the volume they do. And it's 20 years later, they're all gone.
Hmm.
So, what I could tell you about POWRi and its growth, I'm really fortunate, to have the people that work for me. I've brought on some young people, Talon Turner, one of them, who's our series director. Here's a kid that was 16 years old, but I seen the talent he had. And, did I take a chance with him? Yes. But at the same time, I'm also grooming him as a succession plan. Same way with our TV company. We brought in the right producers, the right directors, people that want to go prove to the world they're capable of doing it. And you'd be surprised. You cut the rope loose and let them go, and they will just outperform because they want to be successful. Hope that makes sense.
No, that does. So when did you decide to go into the 410 wing sprint car, you know, market, so to speak? What led to that decision? When did you do it? And we'll get to more later on what you're doing now. But what made you make that decision and when did you do it?
So, I'd like to say, like any good business, midgets was one thing we had on the shelf as content. I'll say content. About 2020, and it was probably before that, 2015, 2016. One of the things we were trying to do is because I was so deeply involved with midget racing, we were trying to secure midget racing. And what I mean by that is we used to have 4 to 5 different engine builders. We had a Gertie, we had a Fontana, we had an Esslinger, we had the Mopar, and then Toyota came out. Well, then now we're down, if you don't have ample suppliers, you start backing yourself into a corner, and kind of where midget racing is right now. Midget racing is an expensive, very expensive form of racing. When you look at a Toyota engine or a SR11, those are the only 2 engines that you can buy off the shelf. Yes, you can go build your own motor. You can take a Mopar, Mar. There's Esslingers out there, but they're not winning. So people want what's winning, and now we're down to just 2 motors. Well, if you look at the trend of midget racing in the last 3 years, it's unfortunately, I don't like to say, but it's either on a downward trend or it's plateaued out. And we're very successful and happy. We just got done running DuQuoin, which was an indoor race, and we had 56 midgets. We ended our outdoor season with 53 and 45. But it's not uncommon right now to run in July or August and only get 18 to 20 of them. And, it's made me nervous back then. and to answer your question about the 410s, I wound up buying Lake Ozark Speedway. When I bought that track, they were running 360 wing sprints, and it was a very heavy track for that, meaning they scheduled it. It was a weekly deal. Well, you were constantly competing with ASCS at the time that Emmett owned it. And in 2020, we had what's called the Warrior region in my area. Well, the Warrior region the guys would get better, and then they would leave the region and go try and run with the national guys. And that would take cars away from your track. So I had to come up with something to secure my track, to make sure. And one day I said, you know what, guys, you're going to think I'm crazy, but I'm going to put on a 5,000 to win 360 and a 5,000 to win 410, and we're going to run them both together. Which, yes, I lost money, but I was trying to make sure that I would get a full field, and we had 34 10s show up, and I said, all right, we're going forward. So from that day on, I started the 410 series in 2021, and then when COVID hit, it put a dampener on everything. I basically had to stop because we couldn't get tires, I couldn't get races. So 2021, we just kind of pieced together what we could. And then we rebound back in 2022 a little bit, and I was still struggling because COVID was still out there, and it was getting tough. And so we had like maybe 15 or 18 shows. It got a little bit better. Tires were getting more available. And then in 2023, it got even better. And then this year, 2024, we were able to put on a good, solid season. And, it was so successful. And I said, if I'm going to start a winning sprint car series, it's going to pay a minimum of this and a minimum of this to start. And I won't take anything less because I don't want to spend the time and effort and try and get top drivers for 2,000 to win or 3,000 to win. So my number one goal was to start this series with 5,000 to win, 500 to start as a minimum base. Now all our purses are that at the very least are 7 or 10 grand to win. So here we are today, 2024. We had a very successful year last year, and it just compounded and kept growing and growing. And I'm very fortunate. I'm in a good market where nobody else has 410s. So I'm taking full advantage of it, which is it right smack dab in the Midwest.
So that being said, through those first few years, how nerve wracking was it when it wasn't going so, where you were kind of had to make ends meet? How difficult is it to make ends meet when you're struggling with a series, but you got to pay guys, they get antsy. And then on top of that, you have the Outlaws in the region, and now you have High Limit in the region. How difficult is the moving targets of balancing all that?
Well, I think it is. It's difficult, and that's why, when we come out with our schedule, fortunate, it's good if you have an ally in both series, so you can say, hey, let me know where you're at in our area. So typically, when the Outlaws run in my area, they start running in March, April, May, because they start out down south in Texas and Arkansas and Oklahoma, and then they work their way up to Missouri, and that gets them through, because of the weather, that gets them through March. And then after the 1st of April, we've got the Outlaws are at Peevely in southern Missouri, and then they're out of the area. High Limit the same way, which I work with them, and they're in our area a little bit now, not near as much this year, but they do race. Like High Limit runs at our track, and the Outlaws used to run there as well. And then they go to Lucas Oil for 2 days, so it works out really good. I got a midweek race, and then they go to Lucas Oil for 2 days. Once they're done with that, or they're pretty much out of our area. Yeah, they run in Oklahoma, they run in Kansas City, but we're a state away, and the chances of our drivers, if I wasn't racing, they would probably go, because when High Limits in our area, or even the Outlaws our drivers go support them.
Yeah.
And so we take off. We shut down. Like, I have a 40 race schedule for the 410s. It starts the end of February, goes all the way to November. There's a lot of time in between that to go run high limit races or the World Outlaw races. So we have a lot of respect for those series. Let's just face it, they're at the top of the food chain. So, you don't want to go against them, for one, not just for the drivers, but the fans as well.
So tell me how or I guess explain the deal with fast, because the All-Stars come around. So now you're adding another regional series. And even though they don't come down into your area per se, you could have guys go up. So tell me, did that make you nervous? And then tell me how the deal with fast originated and how that's going to work.
Well, when you ask what made me nervous, what do you mean? What
Did
made
the
me
All
nervous?
Stars, did the bringing back of the All Stars with two national series, did that make you nervous? So we'll start there.
No, not really. I mean, I work really close with high limit. Like I said, I talk to Mike Hess a lot and Brad Sweet whenever I really need to, and Kyle Larson's son runs a lot with us with the micros, the junior sprints, the restrictors. So if I ever, wanted to ask them a question, I got a straight answer. But Brad Sweet has been phenomenal to work with. They want, in spite of what people think, they want to work with you. It's in their best interest. When you look at it from their point of view, they want us to be successful. The reason they want us to be successful is when they come into our area, we have cars to provide to them. So it's a two-way street. Not only that, the guys that get to the top of our talent level, they peel off and they start running, they'll start running high limit or the Outlaws, just like our midget drivers. You become good with POWRi. The next thing you do, you go run USAC. And then after that, you move on. Every one of them guys, from Christopher Bell to Kyle to the guys that made it in NASCAR, they started out, they were running POWRi. And then they go on to the next level of sanctioning body, which was USAC, and then so on and so on. But it's important to work with those guys because they want our cars and we want to, it's a double-edged sword. We both want to be successful, but unfortunately, there's times that we wish they'd get out of our market because they're here too long.
Yeah. So, okay, that being said, how does the deal occur with Fast, where you guys kind of are teaming up now?
Well, I don't know that I exactly answered the All-Stars, but when the All-Stars, let me come back to that. When I heard they were coming back, I wasn't too nervous because even before, when the All-Stars were around, they really didn't race in the Midwest. I begged Tony and the group to come down to the lake, and I got them down to the lake. That's as far south as they go, and then they'd go up to Knoxville and then head back east. So when the All-Stars came out, I think it was probably more pressure on the Fast Series because I don't know, it's tough enough to compete with the Outlaws and High Limit, but to have another series that's almost equal in value or equal, we're sharing the same drivers like I am with Extreme and POWRi, it gets a little dicey and you got to learn to really work together. Now the Fast Series with Aaron, if you were to look at a map and take, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and come right down through Indiana to Illinois to Missouri, Oklahoma, and down to Texas, it's kind of like an arc, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of racing right there for us. I'm not looking to drive to Colorado or book any shows past the Kansas-Colorado border. For that matter, I'm not looking to get that far out, nor am I looking to go up. We do race in Iowa. I raced at 2 tracks in Iowa, but the next track above that would be Knoxville. So there's plenty of cars up there. Illinois, the state of Illinois, doesn't have a lot of good sprint car tracks. It has a lot of good stock car tracks. Indiana has a lot of good sprint car tracks. And then Ohio does as well, and Pennsylvania, obviously. But with Aaron, we were trying to when we reached out to him, I said, how'd you like to work together so that when we go into Indiana, into Illinois, or even if it's in Kentucky, because we run at Paducah, Kentucky, that you can come and I don't like to say co-sanction, we run them in conjunction. So, I've been there, done that with co-sanctioning, and one's always higher than the other, and really we're about equal. So when I asked Aaron, if he'd be interested in it, everything just came together real nice. And I tell you honestly, a lot of this has to do with Kevin Newton, our sponsor.
That was where I was going next.
So Kevin came on board sponsoring us. This year he wanted to start a wing sprint car group in Indiana, and he wanted that so he could race local because he's based out of Terre Haute. Well, they tried it, and unfortunately, not him, I think the people he was depending on, the rest of us were just off doing our thing, not paying attention to him, not realizing what it takes to start a series, sanction it, get the insurance, get the tracks, get the payout, all those things that you need to do it properly, from safety to uniforms to everything. A lot has to happen to make it look successful. And they started it, and they kind of struggled and had some issues. And one night they just fell on their face at Terre Haute, and not from anyone's, it wasn't anyone's fault. It was a group of people that they just didn't pull it together. And at the end of the day, I said, hey, would you guys, would you like some help from a sanctioning side? And Kevin said, absolutely. So I met with him and sat down and tried to find out exactly what he was trying to accomplish. And once I did that, I said, hey, we can do that. I need to see about, securing, not so much securing the territory, but being able to expand to Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, all the states I said. That's when Aaron, with the Fast and Boss series, I always had an eye on him because he was doing some really good things. We were just way over here, and we didn't conflict with anything, and just picked up the phone and called him. And I think Kevin decided to sponsor him, and that's when he became sponsored by Honest Dave's Roofing. And I had set up a meeting with those two and said, hey, I got an idea about working together so we can do some racing in Indiana or Illinois or Kentucky. I said, my guys will go there because that's just a state over. Your guys will go there. That's a state over. But if we both had to travel to each area, now you got to cross 2 states. So he agreed. And then, when I sat down with Aaron, I said, man, Aaron, you look like you could use some help. I said, you need a new website. You need to get stuff. The drivers and the fans and the teams, they have a high expectations. Let's face it, the World Outlaws and High Limit have set the bar very high. So if you're not performing to their level, it doesn't look professional. And Aaron is just a super nice guy. And I said, Aaron, one thing I can tell you is I can help you. We'll get you on my race pass. We'll get all this. And he's been phenomenal. The other thing is I want to see him succeed because it's important to the regional series to work together. Unlike the bigger series, we can't afford to lose money. We don't have those deep of pockets. We don't have flow. We don't have dirt vision. So it's in our best interest to work with each other to make it successful.
So how does this work now with Fast? Or all, like, you guys are together and all the races count toward both? Or are they races that are separate?
No. So his series will always be owned by Aaron.
Yes.
And he will continue to run his deal. He'll make his schedule. He'll run his races. But it's all the other things that we're going to do to support him so he can get timely press releases out. He can get pictures done on the website. He can get, get MRP, get everything uploaded so he's on the fast track like the rest of us are. I think we have a lot of tools to offer him under our umbrella. For instance, the guys now for $100, they get $100,000 worth of secondary insurance. So once the track falls short of their insurance, ours would kick in. But there's no place you can go get that for $100, and we're not asking. We don't charge Aaron anything. It's a free service because as we grow, they grow. And our goal is to continue to grow our brand of POWRi. And as you get it on other sanctioning bodies, you get it streamed, people start to recognize who you are and want to work with you.
So he's like a separate segment or region of POWRi.
That's correct. He's his own deal. We're supporting him big time.
Yes. So regional racing, you brought up regional racing. How important is that, do you think, I mean, I feel it's important for the ecosystem of sprint car racing because guys develop at those lower levels and then they advance to the national levels. Should be the feeder system, sort of like the All-Stars used to be, as well as the Gum Out series with the World of Outlaws kind of ended up. I mean, that's where Jason Myers came from, Delansky, Pittman. Is that kind of the role? Is that the role you see with the regional programs, especially in sprint car racing right now?
Most definitely. I mean, when it comes to what I'm doing, when it comes to what Aaron's doing, when it comes to what the All-Stars are doing, it is very critical for us to be successful. And it's so critical because when the Outlaws come in town, they brought their 10 drivers or whoever it is, and they don't have cars to support the rest of the field. No one wants to go watch a 15-car field, right? Same way with high limit. When they come into our area, we take off. So our top 12 or 15 drivers will go run their event and support them. And it is very important for us to have good. I would, if you were to ask this question to Brad Sweet, Kyle, or Carter, they will point blank tell you our success is critical to their success.
And I would agree with that. Now, I know in central Pennsylvania, for instance, I feel weekly racing is struggling. When I say weekly, I mean the weekly track, the weekly racing, Saturday night racing program. How is it out in the Midwest? I mean, you're a series now. How is it in the Midwest? And is that the case? Do you feel maybe regional racing where you move around in that region is a better avenue nowadays than, say, the weekly track that runs your Saturday, the same Saturday night, Friday night program?
Over and over and over?
Yep.
So let me give you an example. I run 3 racetracks myself. The one, on 2 of them, I'm partners with another one and I own one. And I've had this one that's going on the 4th year. In the 3 years I owned it, I quickly switched it from weekly racing to, which means about 30 nights of racing. This year, 2024, was my most successful year financially with it because I only ran 15 races.
Special events.
Yeah, I only ran special events. And here's what's happening, and it's not just sprint car racing because I have all the stock cars, right? So all the stock cars in Missouri, and running an A mod, a B mod, a Midwest mod, or the lower tier stock cars that are very affordable, let's say, even those guys are struggling to run every Friday, Saturday like they used to. I think that, when it comes to the weekly racing isn't struggling because racers don't want to race every week or tracks don't want to stay open. Let's face it. I want to keep my track open every Saturday. But what's happening is I'll run a big 2-day, 10,000 to win Memorial Day week. And from then until July 4th, when I run my next special, I just gave all my profits back to weekly racing. So Anyone with any kind of brains would say, well, let's get rid of the weekly racing. So that's pretty much what we did. We got rid of weekly racing. We run specials. And then when we're done, we make the profit, shut the door, turn the lights off, and wait till we come back, right? When you look at the weekly racing, probably where you're at, which is no different than us, the average drivers just can't afford it. When you look at, okay, well, why is that? Well, it's because A, the cost of engines have doubled, the cost of tires have tripled, the cost of fuel, yes, even though it's come down. Like, for instance, I bought gas yesterday for $2.50 a gallon. I haven't seen it that cheap in years, right? The other thing is, interest rates are 8% right now. So the cost of living is really high right now. And the uncertainty of who is going to be the president and the direction the economy's going, that all plays a big factor in it, especially when hamburgers used to be $3 and now they're $6, right? You can't take a family of four to a racetrack for $25. It's now $75. So when it comes to the weekly racing, what's important is what every family has some discretionary money. What are they going to spend that on? Are we going to go to the movies this weekend? Are we going to go to the races? Are we going to the carnival? We don't have enough to do everything, so we're forcing families to pick and choose what we want, and that's kind of why I think right now a tire, an example of 2 years ago a tire for a midget was 185 to 205. Now it's three something. Well, it's more than tripled in price. In the same way with a sprint car tire, it's not cheap, to run racing and with the fuel, the engines, and the tires. I know when I raced, my number one cost was tires. Second cost was fuel, and that's to get up and down the road.
It's funny. Unfortunately, I don't think those prices are going anywhere with the tires. They're not going to automatically lower them to two
They're
hundred
not going to
dollars.
go. They're not going to go. No, they're not going to go down. There's
No,
nobody in this world takes their pricing down.
no,
That's
no.
then you're going.
Unfortunately,
And it's kind of sad because when COVID hit and the year after and everything shot up, right? Eggs were ridiculous. Those prices don't come down as fast as we need to see them come down, even though COVID stopped. It takes, and a lot of that, here's the other thing, Jeremy. Since COVID, the world has changed significantly,
yep.
and we've streamlined everything. Everything's on the internet. I mean, look at Amazon. They just blew up. And, pre-COVID, you could order something and get it in 2 days, 3 days. Post-COVID, you could order it at 8 in the morning and get it to your house by 2 in the afternoon. So a lot of things have changed. The working from home, I think that's going to change. I think with our new, you see what Elon Musk is doing. He's mandating everyone come back to work. Let's face it, if you own the business, the intention is that you come to work. So I'm not saying you can't work from home. There's a lot you can do from home. Technology has changed the way the world operates. So yes, you can do a lot of things at home, but by God, if you were at work, you'd have heard the conversation the guy next to you is having about an account you have to deal with. So there's a lot of good and a lot of bad in the things that have happened. But I do believe weekly racing, it's not struggling because we don't want it to be there. It's because the cost of living is so high and the demands, you know, since COVID, the families, the working class people, our raises haven't doubled or tripled because the cost of living went up, right? We're still getting probably a 5% increase since COVID or whatever that may be for everyone. But a lot of things, the things have stayed stagnant.
Yeah, and I mean, let's face it. I know for us, what I see is we have so many big shows here. We have 114 races in the area, in just central Pennsylvania, which is Port Royal, Lincoln, Williams Grove, Baps. I mean, you have so many tracks in a within 2 hours of each other, and we have 114 races. The other thing is we have so many big races that when you have a weekly show and you can watch it on Flow for a year at $179, and by the end of the year, all the races you watch equal 25 cents. That's difficult on the weekly show because why are you going? I mean, you want to save your money for the big shows, and we have so many of them. It's like tennis and golf, then it's built around the majors. And how do you deal with streaming and that dynamic when it comes to your races?
Well, I was hoping you'd ask that question because you go ask the average promoter, and I don't mean average, and I mean just any promoter. The first thing they'll tell you is streaming's killed our business. How many times have you heard that?
I've heard it enough. I've heard it enough. Let's put it that way.
So, um, I've been fortunate that we've had our series. You know, when streaming first started, I was there for it, and it was like musical chairs. We had to hurry up and get with the streamers, otherwise when the music stopped, you didn't know who's with who, right? First comes, I remember when Flow announced they were taking USAC, and that was the big announcement. And
Yeah.
obviously have Dirtwood and so on. And I was with Speed Sport or Speed Shift, and Speed Shift got bought out by Flow. So then I went and did one with Speed Sport, and then Lucas Oil was our title sponsor. I was able to jump on board when they created Mav TV streaming, and then Mav TV streaming got bought out by Flow because it took over doing the Lucas Oil late model. So then I was on Flow. Then after that year, I had to make a decision. What are we going to do? So I was fortunate enough from my old job, I convinced some investors to invest in a streaming company, and we created S2F. And those investors, put into that, and we launched S2F, and it's in its second year. Last year, we streamed a little. We wanted to get our feet wet, but we kept it kind of hush hush. We just did local stuff till we made sure we had all the right equipment, the
Sure.
producers, the directors, everything in place, right? And this year, it's taken off phenomenally because when we launched it, just like Aaron and the Fast Series, we're in negotiations now about the streaming. Well, I'm not here to just try and stream everyone. We want to make sure the ticker tape shows up. We want to make sure that you have lineups. You send a one camera shoot to a racetrack, and that's all you get. But if you look at a Flow or Dirt Vision or ours, you get a ticker tape, you get driver lineups, you get slideshows, you get all the bells and whistles, you get a roaming camera, you get a pit reporter. And again, Dirt Vision and Flow have raised the bar for the rest of us that we can't just do a one camera shoot. It looks like crap, right?
Yep.
But in my humble opinion, and this is just my opinion because I'm close to the work ethics of it, and what I mean by that is streaming actually helps increase your attendance if you use it right. There's so much marketing and social media that comes out of streaming with reels and highlights and things like that we use. And here, I'm going to give you an example. I was used to be in DuQuoin, and we were out of there for a while. I've got back into that indoor arena, and 2 years ago was the first time we ran it. Last year was the second, and this year was the third. When we first took it back over, we lost money. The second year, we lost a little, but damn near close to breaking even. And you'd almost say, why you keep going? Well, our third year, I always tell everyone, give it 3 years because it takes you 3 years to figure out what you're doing, what's going to work. This year, we had a phenomenal crowd, a phenomenal car count. Everything was like, okay, now we're on the right path. And this is the third year. What do I owe that to? Well, it wasn't the newspaper and it wasn't the radio. What was it? Well, we did a lot of advertising on social media, streaming, and I also believe it's important that, how many times have you watched something and said, I want to go there? So I have a bunch of tracks on my bucket list that I want to get to. But when I look at the demographics every night of who watched our stream, most of them aren't in our area. So, I'll give you an example. I'm running a race in St. Louis at the Dome. When you go look at who watched your stream, the majority of the people aren't even from your area. They're from 2 to 3 states away. So, you look at High Limit. They run on a Tuesday night. Not too many of us can get off Tuesday afternoon, drive to the racetrack, and get back. So I think streaming, in my opinion, if it's used right, there's also a lot of other things that can be used off streaming, and that is the promotional side of getting your sponsors out there and raising money. Um, but I'm going to tell you right now, if it wasn't for streaming, I'm not sure half our series, whether it's Flow, High Limit, or World Outlaws, would even be around because there's no money in sanctioning races. So yes, even though it is a revenue stream for us, it's also an outlet for us to get our product out there and promote it. Now it's up to you how you take that product. You can sit there and say, my crowd's going down and I'm doing terrible and poor me, but you need to look at what's going on around you and figure out how can I take advantage of this. There's not a lot of, when you watch weekly racing, just to give you an idea, there's not a lot of people that'll watch weekly streams. So that should tell you right there that streaming isn't what's killing your weekly racing. When you only get 50, 100, 200 people watching a local stream, that's not enough to worry about.
No, I've often, now we're in a different area. I mean, we're in the biggest sprint car area in the country.
Oh,
Or,
yeah, you guys got it going on up there.
I've often said, and this isn't me being a homer because I get accused of not being a homer, but um, I think streaming's good for series. I think streaming is good for national series, especially. I do not think it's good for the weekly program because you're already fighting a lot of battles with the weekly program, as we talked about earlier. And then you add weather to it, they're staying home and watching something else. Plus, even Lincoln Speedway or Port Royal Speedway, I know their numbers. So for them, they're competing streaming. Okay, if you have a regular show at Port Royal, you're competing against the Outlaws and High Limit because people stay home and watch the Outlaws and High Limit. That's where it hurts, but it's great if you have a special events track. That's so it's kind of, to me, because I own Sprint Car Unlimited.tv, and we don't do weekly races. We do specials at BAPS. BAPS only has 10 or 11 410 shows. So it's kind of a moving target, but I agree with you. Very good for national series, very good for one-off events like Gateway, uh, any of those other one, Chili Bowl. Can you imagine how many people watch
So
Chili Bowl?
it's several thousand people,
Oh, even
Um,
the Nationals. I know what the Knoxville
yeah.
Nationals draws.
But
So
you pretty much answered my question.
yeah,
You answered your own question. You don't do weekly racing streaming
no.
because there's the viewership's not there, right?
Um, I think it depends on your track. Like Port Royal.
Yes, I will agree with you. But if you're any kind of businessman, if the
Yeah.
viewership was there, you'd be doing it, correct?
Well, I think it's what the companies give you. There's a lot of variables that go into that. Streaming companies will pay a national series, say, more than they pay, because I know what some of the contracts are, and I can't believe the tracks make the deals. But that's business. I'm sure
Yeah, no, but what I mean is the fact that, let's face it, if I can get the numbers of streaming a local weekly track, I would be there doing it. It's just
right.
not there. And that just compounds to what your question was about, is streaming, you talk to a lot of tracks and they think streaming's killing their weekly racing. Well, I don't even know of a lot of tracks getting weekly streamed anymore, right? They're all special events and series.
Yeah, Pennsylvania is probably now. I believe Attica obviously has Dirt Vision. The Grove has Dirt Vision weekly. Port Royal has Flow weekly. And you have now Lincoln has a different deal where I don't know, they pick like 12 to 15 events a year and they're on Flow, and they're not all of them are big events. So it's kind of a that's kind of a mixed bag. Pennsylvania's a different animal. altogether because we just have
Yeah,
so there's a lot when you look at weekly racing here. I mean, look, do I think it's a piece of the pie on a weekly show that streaming probably doesn't help? It's not the whole pie. There's other things that go into that. And I think streaming's great for like the Tuscarora 50, the Williams Grove National Open, Speed Week, things like that, because people are coming to the big events no matter what. That's what we are now.
yeah.
We're tennis and golf, as far as I'm concerned. So it's a moving target. It really is a moving target, and I think I agree with you. We need to negotiate that target better.
I mean, and then when you look at Flow itself, they're huge. I mean, they're
Yeah.
doing NASCAR stuff all the way to, I was sitting there watching with my granddaughter. I was watching the Dome, and there was a crash that was going to take them 3 hours. And we're on Flow, and I backed out of it, and there they are doing gymnastics. And my granddaughter made me watch gymnastics on Flow, and I've never done that. I'm like, there's not much Flow doesn't have.
No, in fact they
Uh,
just I have AHL. It's the American Hockey League. I go see the Hershey Bears, which is right under the Washington Capitals. They have that contract that they bought this year, and they have wrestling. Wrestling's huge for them. I used to cover wrestling, so yeah, Flow is huge. And if you look at who their investors are, places like Westinghouse, it's a it's a big company with a lot of money. So yeah, Flow does a good job covering a lot of sports.
yeah.
So last thing, and I'll get you out of here. Again, I appreciate you joining the show. What is the future? I mean, because you didn't think that you'd probably get to this point when you started this in 2005. So, looking in your crystal ball, if you could, you now have fast under your umbrella. You have the midgets. You have all these stock car divisions. You're working with High Limit. You're working with the World Racing Group. Where does POWRi go from here? Is it just about maintaining and strengthening what you have, or do you look for other places or other avenues to add content under your umbrella?
Well, we're looking in right now. We're because of where we are. We have a lot of opportunity to continue to help out people and grow. This beginner series or series that have been out there, but they just haven't been able to attach themselves with the right people to get them to grow. We're growing into, we're working hard into the Oklahoma, Texas area. And if you look at the map, we're kind of trying to make an arc from Pennsylvania, Ohio, down to Texas, right through the state of Missouri. And that arc there is what we're going to focus on. Just like, everybody goes to Florida beginning of, in February and March or to go, we're going to go to Texas, and it's just as warm down there. And it's a lot closer for our competitors. It's 6 hours, 8 hours instead of 16 hours, right? But we're not, I should say this, our goal is to continue to keep growing and growing our brand and getting as many sanctioning, as many series that will work with us. And, our goal is to be able to provide, just like Aaron, we have a lot of tools Aaron needs to be successful. We're not here to hand out money. That's not what we do, because we're here to give you the help you need, whether it's getting a press release out or getting results out timely, or do you need uniforms? Do you need help getting, what are the basics that you do when you run a race? Do you post the heat race winners? Do you do a 30-second reel of a promo at the beginning of the week? Do you have an infograph out there so the fans know where to go? There's a lot of basic stuff that I think people miss. And it's really, it's not reinventing the wheel. It's not being better than anyone. It's just doing everything you put on your checklist week in and week out and being consistent. And you'll be surprised. Like, advertising on Facebook, just to spend $100 and advertise a reel, and you pick the demographics you're targeting. I mean, everybody does that, right?
Yep.
Just ask them if they do it week in and week out, and they'll say, no, I really don't. Well, you got to get consistent doing that to build your fan base up. Um, we're not looking to stop. And honestly, I hope you call me in 5 more years and say, holy shit, you expanded here. That's our goal. We didn't start this just to be stagnant. We started it so we can continue to grow and compete with the major series out there. I'm very happy. Most of the people would never say this, but you got the Outlaws high limit, whichever way you want to put it, 1-2-2-1. I'm perfectly happy being on the podium with them because there's so much business in my level of the field that it is great. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
But you know what? If I was third to the Outlaws in high limit, I wouldn't be upset.
That's my goal. I'm not saying we are, but that's my goal.
Well, you're doing a good job. Obviously, a lot going on in the off season, a lot of buzz with the acquisition. We're putting fast under your umbrella. You guys are expanding, and I'm happy I was able to get you on the show, tell people a little more about you, what you're doing down there. And again, I appreciate you taking time out so close to the holiday to join the deep dive.
Well, thank you. And you have a Merry Christmas and all your listeners. And, for all the 410 fans that are listening, we're excited to, I think not just in 2025, but in 2026 and 2027, we're working with Aaron already to come up and run some weekends up there where our Elite 16 follow us up there. And that's another program we came up with that is just phenomenal and it's taken off, very well. I didn't know if you wanted to touch on that a little, but that Elite 16, we take in the top 16 that sign up. They're guaranteed $200 tow money, 2 free pit passes, as long as they follow the tour. No, it's not high limit money. No, it's not World Outlaw money. It's regional money. But by God, tell me a regional series that's doing that. Not many.
They are not, and that's how you get to grow your regional series, and it's also how you get bigger names who use that as a springboard to maybe running World of Outlaws, and that's never a bad thing.
Yes, sir.
Kenny, thank you very much for joining the show. I appreciate it, and Merry Christmas to you as well.
Hey, thank you. Mary, you and all your listeners, have a great one and be safe.
You too. That's going to wrap up another edition of the SprintCarLimited.com Deep Dive. A big thank you to Kenny Brown for joining the show. A lot of good stuff there. Also, if you like our YouTube content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. You can check out our daily exclusive content at www.sprintcarlimited.com. We'll be off a week for the Christmas holiday, and we'll be back on January 2nd with another edition of the Deep Dive.